Joanna Hunt says, do you think that we could have an intellectual revolution in America? How could we make that happen, where reason, logic, debate, and discussion are valued over emotion, rhetoric, and marketing? Again, I don't mean to be a jerk about this, Joanna, because it's a great question. It's the kind of question so beautiful, almost makes me cry. But I don't think it's a modern phenomenon. I'm not sure that reason, logic, debate, and discussion have ever been valued over emotion, rhetoric, and marketing in terms of large populations. The Founding Fathers, the genius, I think, of the Founding Fathers they were not a large group of people. It wasn't an entire nation that was being run by debate, discussion, logic, and reason. It was a relatively small group of people, very small, 20. And really, when you get down to the big thinkers, probably 10, 5, 6, 7, 10. I like this, scroll over there. PAX 77 said, yeah, B.O. Barack Obama is so yesterday. Oh, you got that right, sister. He is. He's really just so yesterday. It's old news. He's just tired, and I think people are ready to get him gone. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. The reason America was as successful as it has been, and could be successful again if we just get back to the instruction manual, honestly, there's nothing in that Constitution that's wrong. It's just all the problems we have are we don't listen to it. But what I think happened there was in fact a small group of a remarkable there was a remarkable quality. I haven't really thought about this in much detail to the founders, but here's the thing. They were intellectuals, no question that they were intellectuals and deep thinkers and very serious thinkers and read a lot and studied a lot, but at the same time they weren't just intellectuals. They had jobs. They were in many ways regular people. So the modern definition in my mind of an intellectual is somebody who does nothing but just, speculate and all the rest of it, and just talk about, movies and sit there sipping their coffee and smoking their cigarettes and talking about the revolution. When you got the founders, you had guys who were extremely well educated by any standards, and at the same time, they didn't do that for a living. They weren't legislators. They weren't aristocrats. They didn't just sit around and drink tea and have the servants bring them in and smoke cigars and talk about politics. They had practical, real-world experience. Washington was a planter. He was a farmer, basically, and so was Jefferson. And Ben Franklin was a printer, and John Adams was an attorney. Precious few attorneys, by the way. Paul Revere was a silversmith. Sam Adams was a brewer, and Madison. All these guys, they had real world experience, and they were in fact a small little case in time and space where 20 people or 40 or 50 or however many you want to put in there at the Constitutional Convention and in that general vicinity were in fact people who were trying to make a country based on reason, logic, debate, and discussion. Now, they never got there. And the reason they never got there was because the Constitution and in fact the entire cause for independence was pretty much a minority opinion. The reason the minority opinion became the majority opinion was because of the things you talk about: emotion, rhetoric, and marketing. And that's why Tom Paine is the great unsung hero of the revolution, because while Tom Paine had some contributions to the intellectual framework of the country, I don't want to conflate the Constitution and the Declaration, but certainly in the time of the Declaration, just prior to the Declaration, you may have a Jefferson and you may have a document that is, in fact, the Declaration of Independence is one of the finest pieces of thinking and legal arguing in the world, which reaches poetry in cases. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, inalienable rights, that's poetry. It's a superb, rational, reasonable argument. But that didn't do it. It was common sense. It was Thomas Paine, and Thomas Paine's ability to take a noble cause and a noble idea and then apply emotion, rhetoric, and marketing. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but I kind of think that's what I do. I mean, I think I have a reasonable ability for reason and logic and so on, and debate and discussion. I have these high-level kind of thoughts, and I certainly read the work of much better minds than mine, and have enough of a monkey grasp on them to, be able to sketch out the outlines. So I think I'm probably reasonable enough, rational enough, and just barely smart enough to understand some of these things. And they're not terribly difficult to understand. My actual skill set is in emotion, rhetoric, and marketing. I know how to sell these ideas. I'm not trying to duck around your question, because ultimately what your question is a rational society possible? And I think the answer is it is, but it can't get too big, because this is the problem. I think in order to have a rational, reasonable society, you have to have a reputation, and that reputation has to be something that's accessible to everybody. One of the reasons there's less crime in a small town than there is in a big city, they're made out of the same stuff, it's still people, right? I mean, people are still people. But in a small town, you commit a crime, everybody knows it, and you're ostracized. You commit a crime in a big city, you just vanish into the sea of people. And the idea that you have a reputation in a small town, in a small community, means that you're known to be either an honest guy whose handshake is as good as his word, his handshake is as good as a contract, or you're a scoundrel who shouldn't be trusted, loaned money, or given any positions of authority. So they have a reputation. And not to put too fine a point on this, but when you get into computer simulations of the prisoner's dilemma, which is where two people have been accused of a crime, and if one rats the other one out, this is simplifying it. If he rats the other guy out, he goes free. If the other guy rats him out, the other guy goes free. If they both rat each other out, something less bad happens, and if they neither rat each other out, something slightly less bad happens. It's a very classic game called the Prisoner's Dilemma. But basically what you find is in the Prisoner's Dilemma, if you're going to play the Prisoner's Dilemma one time, the winning strategy is to screw the other guy. You have to. If you screw him and he doesn't screw you, you win. But if you don't screw him and he screws you, you lose. If you both screw each other, it's not so bad. So it is the logical choice is to basically screw the other guy on the Prisoner's Dilemma, and that has been run 1,000 million times on computer simulations. Always is the winning strategy. However, if you play the iterated Prisoner's Dilemma, where you continually play the game with the same opponent, then the rules change, and what you find through thousands of computer simulations and common sense too, is that it is not the winning strategy if you're playing again and again and again with the same person to constantly screw the other guy. The best strategy is called tit for tat. In other words, you lead out by being a nice guy. You don't screw that guy. If he screws you, then you screw him back. And you keep screwing him back until he stops screwing you, at which point you then stop screwing him. That is the optimum way to win that game. And so you can think of city life as a series of isolated games of the Prisoner Dilemma where two people meet and they never meet before and they're never going to meet again, and one guy mugs the other one because he can get away with it, disappear into the crowd, and so on. While life in a small town is more like the iterated Prisoner's Dilemma where, I can stick up Dave, the pharmacist, and take his money right now, but Dave knows who I am, and everybody else knows who I am, and I'm going to be identified, and I'm going to go to jail, and when I get out of jail, no one's going to trust me, no one's going to talk to me. So I do think you can have a rational, reasonable, respectable society, but I think you have to have a reputation with it. Once you get into cities and the anonymity of it, it's the anonymity that gives you the cloak of invisibility. This is why I think Andrew Klavan talked about this, although if Klavan talked about it, it's probably useless. I'll just chuck it out there just as an example of the kind of low-grade thinking that you would get if you were watching the Klavan Lounge, for example. Nobody was basically saying that what the media does for Obama and Clinton is it gives them the cloak of invisibility, and that's what the Ring of Power does in Lord of the Rings. The Ring of Power doesn't allow you to have like a Jedi Force thing where you can just move objects with your will, and the Ring of Power doesn't give you, a flaming sword doesn't appear in your hand. What the ring does is it makes you invisible, and when you're invisible, you can get away with murder. And once you realize you're invisible, you will try to get away with murder. It's inevitable. That's what the Ring of Power is. So the fact that the media won't look into Obama or Clinton or the rest of them the way they looked into Richard Nixon is a cloak of invisibility that the Democrats throw over their own candidates, and it makes them corrupt. And it's the same kind of an escape hatch that every criminal has in a big city. I'm going to take your money, and I'm going to run. I'm going to get in a subway. I'm going to go down 4 stations. No one's going to know me. No one's going to recognize me. I'll never see that guy again, and I'll get away with it. So I do think you can have a rational society, but I think everybody needs to know who they are and be held accountable for it.